What up, y'all? So, to start the neutral section, actually, let's get into the basics. Let's rewind the whole timeline back. And let's get into the basic concept of nuance that I don't think is talked about enough anymore, which is poking. And I'm not talking about you knowing what your pokes are, even though I'm going to talk about that in the beginning of the video, but actually understanding the concept of poking and how layering your pokes and understanding how poking works helps your neutral navigation. So, real quick, as I am Labrys here, she is not gifted with pleasant to use frame data, as a way to put it. She is known to be a slow character. She's, even though with her being very momentum heavy, she's a slower character. Her fastest poke is 7 frames, the rest are 9 and above. But that's just with her basic pokes and not getting to the variations of pokes, because pokes aren't limited to what most people think is just their A normals, or in certain cases of B normals that have quote unquote quick startup, and that's not considering the recovery. Pokes actually are in 2 categories just from their basic form of buttons of soft and hard pokes. They're not limited to your normals, they're also specials, and I'll get into that later in. But with soft and hard pokes, the big difference is the recovery. And I'm going to really emphasize knowing your recovery, or at least the feel of what the recovery is, because that changes a lot of things. Like 5A, 2A, and J are automatically for Labrys her fastest pokes. Those are all soft pokes. My favorite in the bunch is her JA. Because most air pokes, like JAs and most modern anime fighters, they are completely cancelable on whiff into actions, and this is already a great tool for an overlying concept that's going to start from this video on, which is understanding the ambiguity you have in options and being able to layer your options. Because being able to sit there and whiff something and have low commitment to it is already a lot. Like 2A, ooh, okay. 5A whiff, okay, I can block, right? That's low commitment. Well, on the other hand, you have hard pokes, which is where I get into Labrys 5B, her 2B, and her sweep. Sweep, I will talk about slightly more in a second, because it's kind of going to get into a subcategory specifically with it. 5B can also fall into the subcategory, but for right now in the speech, let's consider them hard pokes. The reason why is because these are committal. Like, if I whiff 5B, even with me mashing backdash, I will turn on inputs for a second. Like, I am mashing backdash, it takes that long to recover to actually backdash. Unlike if I 5A and whiff, it's like I'm pretty immediately able to sit there and backdash. 2A whiff, immediately able to backdash. Completely different. So, with a hard poke, you're playing the commitment game. But with that commitment game, the big thing is understanding that if you're playing a hard poke, your main goal is to sit there and seek value. Not reward, but value. And I want to push that highly. Because if you're putting it out there, you are putting it out there with at least some level of confidence that it will connect. And with that confidence of it will connect, now you have to be prepared to do something with it. And this is where the ambiguity of understanding your hard pokes come from, because depending on how your hard poke works, it opens up various options. Like, for example, with Labrys. Labrys 5B is both backdash and forward dash cancel. This ambiguity on cancel window, on top of just normal cancels and special cancels, right? This opens the door for a lot of layers on just this connecting on block, because now it gives you options to press advantage or stay in comfortability and not really disadvantage, but staying in a comfortable position where you feel you can manage still navigating neutral and managing the pace of the game. Because once you're sitting there and doing a poke like this, being able to dash cancel off of it, even with it being negative, if they're not expecting it, allows you to sit there and press advantage. The same way, if they are expecting it, right? depending on the range here, like I have the first recordings Narukami 5B. If I'm hitting like max range, like somewhere around here, Labrys 5B into backdash, and they were expecting me to hard commit to sit there and be like, all right, you're going to commit to this in this -3, right? I can back off and take advantage of it because of the fact that you had a concept of like, all right, it is -3. They might try to counter poke me or check me for it, and with that already, there's like, all right, you opened up a layer where it's not like, all right, cool, no. Let me check you for trying to check me. That's where the nuance of poking is, because it's not as simple as like, all right, you throw out pokes, and until one of your pokes connects, oh my god, we're just playing neutral. Like, no, there's steps and nuances and concepts behind playing neutral, and poking is the most basic one. And that's why I was like, it's not pokes as much as this is the concept of poking. Because even with that, there's different cases of everything. Like, for example, Narukami's most famous poke, 5B, right? This is a chess property, very quick normal, but it's still a hard poke because it does have recovery. Like, it is not as simple as like, oh, you press Narukami 5B and it immediately recovers, you can do the thing. Like, if I switch, without it being on block, I'm in the same case. Like, I don't think it shows me doing bot recording history here. Oh, it does. All right, so I'm still mashing backdash, and it takes me a while. Like, it's not that quick. It is still a hard poke. Right? It is still legitimately pressing 5B is still a hard poke with me mashing backdash. So, with that in mind, you have to understand the layers of, okay, both sides you have soft and hard pokes. How do we play around that? Which is where counter pokes come into play. Understanding properties. Like, again, this is a chess property move. So with chess property, guess what? Loses the lows. Better to show this, I should be closer, and it's hard. Labrys, like there. Like, you can low profile chess property things. That's understanding properties. Adds another layer of nuance to playing poking. But with that alone, like, now it opens up different options because you're not committed to like trying to make it whiff, where we get into the concepts of footsies and whiff punishing. But you're getting into this layer where it's like, all right, we both have hard pokes. If their sponsor is going to be a hard poke, I can sit there and play around the hard poke and sit there and try to gain my advantage. And it's not limited to like, I'm doing chain knuckle, but you can sit there, backdash it, sit there, IAD in, and you can sit there or backdash it, just dash forward, and etc. There's different ways to play around someone else's pokes, both hard and soft, which is crazy to say that way, but like that's just legit. Like, there's hard and soft pokes, understanding how to deal with that. Some of y'all degenerates are gonna sit there and have a field day with it. I just have to say that now, but whatever. So, and that's just from the normal standpoint, right? Let's get into special case things that happen in this game with counter pokes, which is Persona normals. Gotta love them. So, for those not familiar with Persona that is watching me talk throughout all this series, one fun thing that is specifically to Persona is Persona Invul. Persona Invul is that on the first active frame, and it's a few frames leading up to it as well, Persona moves have invul, usually on C and D normals, that make it so you can get checked by them. They are actually hard counter pokes, because a lot of the C and D normals in this game are committal. Legitimately, they're just straight up committal. Especially like using Labrys, for example. This takes 9 years. This takes 9 years. 5D, even with it being a 2-part negative edge, takes 9 years. 2D, which is also still just 5D, takes 9 years. So, even the case, if I switch Narukami on about 5C, 2C, like, all of this takes time. JC as well, with its stall, takes time. So, with that being the case, you have to play around Let me get in range for this to connect on block. Let me be here. This is so goofy. Sit there. It's close. There we go. Like, hard counter pokes exist too, especially in this game where persona involves a thing. So you can be checked specifically for trying to poke, even with your soft pokes, depending on someone like having a read on you doing pokes. So with that, how do you create advantage for yourself, right? Well, you have options where it's, keep in mind, your movement's a tool. You're not limited to just, all right, like, this is hard the time because Labra's backdash sucks. And I missed. All right, so, oh, like you have your movement as option where it's like you can sit there and abuse ranges of playing in and out of your opponent's range, sit there and do something. That's going to lead up into the next video, which will be on footsies. Like, knowing your range and knowing your opponent's range, right? And creating advantage off of that. The same way, in cases like this, just sometimes it actually is good for you to forfeit your turn. And with forfeiting your turn, that can also create ambiguity, because in a case like Narukami, I'm going to record this now, because it's dash cancelable, right? Right, so now there's a layer of, on your opponent's side, they have the dash cancel, right? Well, you know it's -3. You can also check it. Even if I'm Narukami here and I sit there and record in 5A, that's a counter. Right? You can check them for it. So there's layers to this poking where it's like you have to sit there and think about, okay, there's all these options that could possibly happen. What's the most advantageous for me, which is where the value comes in. Sometimes actually giving up your turn, like legitimately just sitting there taking this and actually blocking, might be the best thing for your value because it's the lowest risk. Same way, it's like, yeah, you could just sit there and try to check it, right? Like, that does exist. You could just sit there and be like, all right, let me... Oh yeah, I'm in Green Axe, that doesn't work. But it's like, you could try to check it. And that's just from the normal grasp of cancels, right? And the normal grasp of poking. Before we get into, let's switch recording one more time. For the last thing, let's talk about special pokes. So, this is the recording I'm going with for this. So, Zio, right? I'm gonna hard record, hard do something now. So I went into, this is a very low commitment poke. I think completely that Zio, depending on height, is legitimately a soft poke, because literally you almost get to the point you have no landing recovery on this. So if you're sitting there doing air Zio like this, just like air backdash and Zio, you almost can like legitimately immediately take advantage off this as soon as you land, even on whiff. Like, you are not completely stuck in recovery enough off of this to sit there for it to matter. And having a soft poke like this can play a lot of games, because on top of it being a soft poke, it's also projectile. So it being a soft poke projectile adds layers too, because now you have to think, in a case like Labras, right? Stubby, also like slow. How do you deal with projectile pokes, right? Especially at range where other characters, quote unquote, can zone you with more ease because they're faster than you. Understanding things like her persona, legitimately all of her persona normals, and that's just mistiming on my part, all of her persona normals actually destroy level 1 series projectiles. Does not matter what projectile it is, as long as it's level 1, aka it's not a super. All of her persona normals have the ability to actually completely negate and destroy projectiles. That's something you can play around with. Even though it's a hard poke on your end, countering a soft poke, the thing is that even then, like, if you're in a better range when this is happening, you might be able to take advantage of this because of the fact that they weren't expecting it, so they might just sit there and be like, wait, oh, hold up. Because now, even here, I have a lingering hitbox out. Are you just going to run into the hitbox? No. Well, at least Not if you're paying attention enough, right? So that's a layer of playing with it. Also, knowing how your toolkit works, right? So a lot of projectiles in this game, funny enough, are actually considered chess property. So even with this being this low to the ground, if I well time this enough, I go under the projectile. And you can use that as this is going to be hard to time, and I'm going to sit there and do it from round start. To sit there and literally play that to get value. Just because of the fact that it's like, alright, I need to get in on this. Let me sit there and, alright. Let me use my knowledge to sit there and get in. On top of, like, hard counter pokes against projectiles too, right? This move is so slow. Like, Labrys Chain Knuckle is projectile invul. Goes through projectiles, projectile invul. It's very cursed because of the fact that she is highly committal and it's slow. But, like, this is an option. Like, all of these are options to play around with in the concept of poking. And that's why poking by itself is the first concept, because it's so nuanced, because there's so many options to think of during just poking. And it's not me trying to be like, oh my god, there's just so many things to think about with just poking. But this is the basis of understanding, okay, I'm trying to navigate neutral. Just at the base, I need to grasp poking, because of the fact that there are so many ways to put out checks. And those checks are going to be how you get your initial value. So with that alone, you have to be able to be like, all right, what can I throw out comfortably, personally? And I want to stress personal for you. What can you throw out comfortably that aids you in navigating through neutral? Because we're not all going to play the same. I'm going to have a big video on this later. That's probably going to be in 2 parts, which is going to be talking about playstyle and actually game plan, and how game plans are formulated versus understanding how playstyles develop. In those, you have to understand that regardless of what character you pick, regardless of what toolkit you have, you need to be able to cater your decisions to you and what you want to do in the game. So even if I think 5A is a soft poke, in your mind, this could be a hard poke because it is committal enough. It's just committal enough that pressing it might not be something you want to do. So therefore, you lean on JA and 2A more. Same way, it's like, this is a fine hard poke for me. I love using 5B. I love checking the hell out of people with 5B. But this is not the thing for everybody. Like, the normal Labrys poke that I see is actually IADJB. A lot of people love using IADJB. Labrys' normal check because it's a fat normal with almost 360-degree hitbox that she's just swinging things. On top of the fact that layers to it, let me go back to mid-screen. And, of course, I'm too far. It hits backwards, right? So, that adds some layers to the play. And understanding what personally works for you during poking is already something that you have to play around with. So, I hope all that helps you in navigating through neutral a little bit more, just from that basis, because that adds more nuance that's not talked about normally with the basic concept of navigating / playing through neutral, of understanding actually how poking works. So, later, y'all.